Our little homestead is never gonna look the same. You can see all the big heavy machinery behind me right now. Stick around, I'm gonna fill you in on exactly what's going on. Hey guys, welcome back to our channel, The Purpose Driven Homestead. So for those of you who are new to our channel, we are in the process of regenerating a crop farm that has been in the family for a few hundred years, and we have leased all of the land around us, at least the farmland, and we are trying to move that from a traditional farm into a regenerative agriculture model. That means we are trying to move away from the crop farming that was done here for hundreds of years, really. Crops such as corn, soybeans, cotton, peanuts, the whole 9 yards. All of that has been done on this land. It was primarily a tobacco farm for years. We're trying to convert that now into a regenerative model. Now today I want to talk to you guys about something that I really have a lot of mixed emotions about. We are in the process of cutting the timber on this land. Maybe not 100% of it, but there is a lot of it that is being cut. This isn't our property per se. It's actually owned by the family. So this is a family decision that was made, and it's made for a lot of reasons. Now, there are some really big trees on this property, and those trees are dying right now. At least a portion of them are. And that's because when this land originally started out, it was swampland. We're actually up on a higher ridge of it, but in the wooded area, the reason it's wooded is because it wasn't good for farming. Back in I think it was the 60s, the Army Corps of Engineers came through and they dug a huge canal that then drained a lot of this so that it would be more useful. But as part of that, it wound up killing a lot of these old growth trees. So there's a lot of trees in here that are in the process of dying. Sure, there are new trees that are coming up behind it, but a lot of trees are in fact dying. Things like cypress trees that need a lot of water, standing water, in order to live. That's just not present anymore. It's lowland, but it's not wetland, it's not swampland. And so we're in a position where these trees are dying right now behind me. We've actually gone through and we've counted rings, and a lot of these trees, the pines, the oaks, are well over 150, 200 even years old. So some of these are so large that I can't get my arms around them, even if I tried. Two people can't get their arms around them. Here's an example of a big tree that was cut out here. This thing is massive. You can see here, I'll try to put my arms around it. It would take two people to be able to get their arms around this tree. It is from corner to corner here. It's about 4 feet across. So the diameter of this tree is about 4 feet. It's got huge roots. You can see how tall it is just here cut off. This was the narrowest part that they could cut it off at. So huge tree right here. The challenge is they're now dying. The inside of them are hollow, and the outside is all that's left, and a lot of these that are still standing. Now it's important to note, we live in a hurricane zone. We are on the coast of North Carolina. Where we are, we get hurricanes all the time. It's like Florida. They come right up the coast and they glance right off of us, but they come through here a lot. And because of that, we are really concerned with trees falling. Now we've got a lot of trees that are near our house, and then a ton of trees that are near our barns. They're even growing into the barns in some cases because the barns are close to 100 years old, and these trees are well over 100 years old as well. So the trees, when they started growing, actually weren't even near the barn, but now they're growing into the barns. They're right up beside it, or they were very small trees when everything started. And so we've got to figure out some way to get rid of those trees so that they're not a safety hazard for us to fall on us during a storm, crush the barns, that kind of stuff. Now, part of that challenge is to have somebody come in and cut these trees that are near the barns and near the home. That would be almost cost prohibitive. We're talking probably $10,000, $20,000 to cut all these trees down. And that is a real big cost for us, right? That is a huge commitment where you're talking about trying to cut these trees, having a tree service come in, you know, with the buckets, and they're going to come in, they're going to take them down piece by piece. There's a lot of labor involved with that. And so we were going to have to spend a tremendous amount of money to cut those trees. We started talking to the family, and as a team, we kind of decided, because these trees behind me are dying and it's no longer a swampland area just because of what the Army Corps of Engineers did years ago, it's probably time to go ahead and log this property. Now, the reality is when you don't own a farm, you gotta make compromises, and this is a family-owned farm, so it's owned by several people in the family. And if I'm being completely honest, I probably would have loved to see these trees stay longer. But I also recognize that there's a reality in this. The reality is these trees are dying, and no matter how much I don't want them to die, no matter how much I want these trees to stand, the reality is if they're dying, they're only gonna fall, and then what does that do? They do rot. They provide some sustenance to the land as part of that natural cycle. But for the other people that own this property, you know, that's not my call exclusively. And so we kind of got together as a team and we said, you know what, this is probably the right time to do some of these things. And so that's what you hear in the background right now. There are quite a few acres that are being cut today. Now, we are going to leave some of the trees on the property, a small portion, as wooded, and that's because a number of people in our family heat with wood, and so their families and their homes are kept warm with the wood that comes from the property. And so we're going to need to leave some of that in place, but in order to get rid of the trees that are causing problems for us and are going to really probably snap off. During a hurricane, you'd be surprised. These huge pine trees that are out there, they will start swaying in wind. Because they have tap roots that go down so deep in the ground, they don't turn over. They just snap off in the middle, and those huge tops will come down and they'll crush a barn. These trees are immense. And because of that, the weight of them crushing these barns, it would be complete disaster. It would absolutely total the barns. There'd be no coming back from it. And so it's time to act on these, and that's what we're doing today. So it's going to take about a month for all of this process to be done. They go through extremely quick. These guys are very efficient. They have big machinery, big equipment. And so they've moved through. Now, in addition to that, there are some benefits to us specifically. We had, as part of when we moved here, we bought a portion of the property just for our little home. And on that is a small area that used to be probably a few decades, probably 20, 30 years ago, used to be pasture. Now it was planted subsequently in pine trees, and we have logged all of that as part of this process, and we are going to now turn that back into pasture. So this is going to give us some available land again that used to be pasture on the farm and is now turned back into pasture. And so it's kind of a way of getting back into that space that the animals will be able to use. Now it's going to take a little bit of work, and I'm going to show you that over the next coming months and years. We're going to show you how we're turning a lot of this back into pasture and working on that, because there's stumps, there's all kind of work that'll need to be done. We'll be logging, we'll be doing some splitting of wood on the property. So there's a lot of stuff that we're going to get into, so stay tuned for that. Now, part of it also is this is going to save us a lot of time. Today, the pines and the oaks that are around here, especially the pines, they drop a lot of pine needles and they cover the roofs of the barns, and it requires us to get on 20 or 30-foot ladders to get up on top of those barns, clear them off, because the longer that stuff stays, it makes the tin roofs or the galvanized metal roofs, it makes them rust out, because the pine straw just collects up there and then the water slows down and slowly it seeps into those areas and starts to rust, and it creates holes. And so that is a huge challenge. We have to constantly clean off these barns. Now that these pines will be gone, it'll save us a considerable amount of time and a lot of safety concerns, because when we were climbing up on those barns, that's obviously not safe when you're 30 feet up on a barn trying to clean those off with brooms or rakes. And so this is going to help us out a ton as time goes on, and as we get a little older, that's not something that we're going to necessarily want to do, is crawl around these roofs. So these pine trees now are going to be out of the way, and that'll be one more thing that we don't have to do as a chore around the farm. Now, the way the process is going to work, they are clearing it stage by stage. They're going to take the pines out and the hardwoods out at different points in time. The smaller trees, like we're in our pasture, that are only probably 10 or 20 years old, those are very small. They're talking about 6 to 12 inches in size and diameter. And so those trees will likely be used mainly for pulpwood, things that you would use when you go and you buy things like paper towels or notebook paper or any of the things that you use day to day. Pulpwood is what's used for that. Now, the hardwoods. With all of the things going on right now, there's been a lot of train derailments over the past 2 to 3 years. And a lot of that is because the railroads are actually getting in pretty bad shape. So the actual rail lines themselves need to have work done to them. The cross ties have been neglected, and those are those wooden things that go across underneath the railroads, the actual metal railroad rails. Those things need to be replaced. And so there's a big market right now for things like hardwoods, like oaks and gums, to be used to create railroad ties to then replace some of that aging infrastructure. Those are things that just have to happen. And so a lot of these hardwoods are being used for things like that, as well as some lumber too. The bigger pines, those are going to be used and cut up at sawmills. They have to be driven a long way away, but they're going to be used at these sawmills, and they'll be cut up for things like building homes and that kind of stuff. So there's a way, you know, in part, even though it kind of pains me to do this, part of this, it makes me feel good in the fact that we're helping to help other people build homes and do the things that they need to do. It is a natural resource. It's something that we don't necessarily want to do, but it is something that needs to be done. That paper has to come from somewhere. And so it's a little way that we can hopefully give back as part of the process and help others like you to hopefully have the paper products and the furniture and the lumber that you need to do all the things that you need to do. So one of my favorite movies is The Matrix, and there's a scene in there with Morpheus where he tells Neo, welcome to the desert of the real.
Welcome to the desert of the real.
I kind of feel a little bit like that when I look out over this landscape. This is what it looks like today, guys. You've seen us film in front of this pond before. It looks totally different now. All the woods around the pond are gone. You can see all the light coming in now where it was very shaded, very dark before. And that's just a change that we're gonna have to deal with as we look at this. But I wanna tell you about some of the benefits, some of the drawbacks as well of what we're doing. So let's talk a little bit about the downsides first. Now, I think we can all recognize that this is going to change the look of this land forever, at least in my lifetime. Maybe when our children come up, or even our children's children, right? So our grandkids, they might see something that looks more like what we experienced here. That's the reality of it. There's no getting around it. It is going to change the landscape completely around this farm forever. Another thing is the kids loved playing in these woods. So this is something that we really enjoyed. It was something the kids loved playing in. They had their bridges and their this and their that out in the woods where they could really just be kids and enjoy things in nature. And we're going to miss that. That's going to be something that is truly a change for us, and the kids really enjoyed for the period of time, the 6 months or so that we lived here. So it's also going to change a lot about the wildlife that's in the area. We're going to have some good and bad probably with that. This is probably going to change how many deer we have in the area, how many squirrels we have in the area, but it also might change our dealing with coyotes and wolves and that kind of stuff, as they might stick to a different area that they can hunt in more easily. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. But I'm going to call that for now probably a bit of a challenge. It's on the con side. Guys, if you're enjoying our video today, make sure you click that subscribe button. Also, click the notification bell. It's what makes sure that you never miss a video when they come out. Also, give us a thumbs up. Helps our channel more than you know. So you can actually hear the wood chipper going in the background right now. They're chipping a lot of this stuff up to make wood chips that you might buy to make pellets for heating your homes and that kind of stuff. That's going right now, so I'll try to talk over that. But the last thing that I'll probably talk about as a con is just the expense of trying to clean up the stumps. We've got a pasture now that we're going to be working with. That pasture space has a ton of stumps in it. And so we're going to have to figure out ways to clean that up. It'd be costly to have a bulldozer come in or an excavator come in and do that. So we're going to have to figure out some ways to try to do that. Some of the stumps are small, some of the stumps are quite large. We probably just won't be able to get the large stumps out. They'll have to rot out on their own. It'll take a very long time for that to happen. So those are really kind of the downsides of what we're doing today. And it's just reality. So let's talk about some of the positives of this. Now, there are some, and it's hard sometimes to see that when you see something so beautiful go away, but there are positives to this as well. So one, we're going to reseed all this, and so it's going to be reseeded in appropriate trees. So trees that will do well in this type of environment. So there's going to be a combination of pines and oaks and all kinds of stuff that are natural and native to this environment. They're going to be reseeding. We're going to be making sure that gets done. Sometimes people will just kind of let things go and reseed on its own, and we're trying to jumpstart that process. So we're going to definitely do some reseeding on the property in the areas that we want to remain forested land. Another big benefit of this is we're going to actually have them leave a few of these really large trees. And in a later video at some point in the future, we're going to actually either buy our own sawmill or rent a sawmill, or we're going to have somebody come in and do it. We'll just have to figure out from an economics perspective what works the best. There's a lot of used sawmills out there on the market that you might be able to get for a decent price, but we just kind of have to figure that out. So we may have somebody come in and saw them up for us because it just might be simpler. But we're going to leave a lot of those trees, probably 3 or 4 of them, of the large trees, and we're going to make lumber out of them. And we're going to need lots of lumber around here to build barns and things like that. So we want to make sure that we've got some lumber set aside, and it's from the farm. So in a lot of ways, this is really the best option for us, which is it's a little way for the lumber and the trees on the property to live on and continue to be part of our little homestead. The other benefits that we've got here, guys, is that we can do two more things. One, we've got space to expand now. This pasture opens up a lot of space. We're going to use it for woodlot pigs, and that's going to give us an opportunity. They're going to root around. They're going to help us do some of that work. The chickens, the things like that, we can run them in the spaces between the stumps. There's about a 10-foot range between the stump. Our chicken tractors will fit in there. And if you haven't seen any of our videos on chicken tractors, check those out. But once this starts growing back, we're going to need some way to efficiently and without petroleum, right? We're going to try to do this with as little gas as possible. We're going to need to keep this in check. So by putting pigs and other animals, even chickens and stuff like that, on the property and moving them through, we can keep the weeds and that kind of stuff beaten down, but also start regenerating that pasture and working on it as a way of trying to change it over from this monoculture pine environment that was in before into a living pasture again. So that's one of the benefits as well, because you're gonna get a lot of animals working in there. And again, pigs, they can do a lot of work for you in a small space, relatively small space. They'll keep the weeds beat down out of this area and really do a lot to disturb the soil and move it through. So we're gonna have that probably in a subsequent video as well. Now you can see the pond in our background. That's another one of the big benefits, is it's gonna allow more light into this pond. A lot of the stuff that was falling from these pine trees, the needles and that kind of stuff, a lot of those things were falling directly into the pond, and because it's shallowing out that pond, and we don't want that, right? And so we may even have to clear some of this out at some point, but by cutting the trees around this pond, it's going to allow more light to get in there. That's going to allow more of the grasses and things that fish feed on to do, and so that will help us to really get this pond restarted, because right now there's not a ton of life in that pond. There are some fish, but there just isn't a lot going on as far as plant life. This will help that restart. Life needs sun, and so these things are going to help the pond come back to life and us use that for future purposes. If you like today's video and you want to see more about what's going on our little homestead, click that like button, subscribe to our channel. It helps us out a ton. We would love to get connected with you. Also, click that little bell. That is a reminder. It is that notification bell. That'll send you a notification every time we have a new video. We're going to have a lot coming out here soon on how we're going to be repurposing this, how we're going to be cleaning it up, also what we're going to be doing as part of our expansion. We still have all of the pasture that we're working on as well. We've got fencing that we're working on. So there are so many things that we have got going on currently in this space. Lots and lots and lots to do, lots and lots to share with you as well, to help you on your journey, whether it's in a big space or a small space. Our goal is to help you. Our motto is do what you can with what you have, whether that's a back porch, a back patio, a backyard, or back 40. With that, guys, have a wonderful, blessed day, and we'll see you next time on the Purpose Driven Homestead.